Hi. Now what are we doing here? We're doing something very particular in a certain kind of way. And it's an important thing to do. And um, it's offered not so much to tell you the truth of a thing, but to give you some support for your own thinking. Emerson, in his lecture to the Harvard University in 1837, called The American Scholar, said that books are very important, but the main thing they're important for is to inspire. You're not supposed to give up your own thinking in order to enjoy a book. So even though during this next phase of things of the True White Brother story I'm going to talk about books, it's not meant to do anything but to inspire your own thinking. You're not to lock yourself into any of those ideas. You're to think for yourself. Now, one of the things that the True White Brother does, though, and I'm very specifically going to do it in this segment of things, which is to create an alternative picture story to the Big Bang, Darwinian evolution, and scientific materialism. That is, there's no spirit, only matter. No intended creation, only random chance. Now, our civilization, and Western civilization, which is in decline actually, which is dying for lots of reasons, and we'll get into that at some point. That's part of the crisis. The death of one civilization and the birth of another. None of those things happen without a great deal of trials and problems. But in any event, I'm going to create a word picture of the world, and have already started doing that with these True White Brother story material, that I intend to be an alternative to what science tells us with its ideas of the Big Bang, Darwinian evolution, scientific materialism, etc. Now, why do we want to do this? Well, we want to do this because those ideas aren't true. They're workable, they're understandable. You can get into the history of science and you can understand that they have meaning for the people that developed them. And they also have a meaning in what I'm describing as the evolution of consciousness. We had to go through these ideas. We had to create this picture of the world in order to get prepared for the next step. The transformation of consciousness required that we come to a kind of end, in a way. That something end. And the part of what needed to end was the reliance of people of reason on the doctrines of the Roman Catholic Church. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't any mysteries that the Roman Catholic Church worked with or possessed, but let's do a little history here. In about the 4th century, following the events that occurred in Palestine that are remembered in the Gospel stories, which we're going to have to face those problems. Certain bishops of the various churches that existed at that time, those various early Christian churches, united their efforts with Emperor Constantine of the Romans. And this was, of course, in the time when the Roman Empire itself was failing. And between these two sort of social forces at work in the world, the Roman Catholic Church was created. It's not an accident that it's called the Roman Catholic Church, the Roman Universal Church, because it absorbed a great deal of its texture and nature from Rome, which was a top-down, paternal, hierarchical structure. The Roman Catholic Church did for a while include women, but ultimately it excluded women very strongly, as we know today. And it also very intentionally went out into the world and excluded a great deal of the teachings that were recorded by other gospel writers. There's a lot of gospels, and we've come today to understand that there's the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Judas, lots of other things that were said by the people who were around those events. And the Catholic Church excluded those things. And again, this was a process which we should recognize as something that had to happen. and is part of the background, spiritual background of Western civilization. But it does represent a kind of problem in a way, because while it serves certain purposes, it also serves other purposes that were the masking of something. In fact, if we look at the history of religious thought in Western civilization, we will discover that there's a stream parallel to the Roman Catholic Church. And we find this in the Essenes and the Gnostics and the Manichaeans, and then ultimately in the appearance of the Tarot in the 14th century in Marseille, France, and then the alchemists and the Rosicrucians, and then eventually in the 19th and 20th century we have anthroposophists and Christian hermeticists who study the book Meditations on the Tarot. Now, all of this history is heretical in terms of its relationship to Christian doctrine. You could say that there was developed in this time two streams of Christian thought, and one had more kinship with the sort of training and practices that underlie the Enlightenment disciplines of the East, but these were considered heretical by the Roman Church, and they were suppressed, through murder. They were suppressed through torture. They were suppressed through all kinds of means that were really despicable. And as a consequence, the Roman Church itself became too earthly. It became too much a center of power. It still is today. You still have, for example, recently there was a dialogue between a bishop in New England and one of the Kennedys, I think, who's a member of Congress, telling this congressman that he's going to be excluded from the Eucharist because he supports abortion or choice. And of course this is an effort by the Church to influence the social. And in large part it actually violates the teachings that Christ gave. Christ said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. And by that he clearly meant, if you bother to think about it, that the state has something that it needs to have from us. Social life has something that needs to have from us, and that's a different thing from our relationship to the divine. People who write about this thing talk about the cross having two axes. It has a vertical axis, which is our personal relationship to the Spirit, and it has a horizontal axis, which is our relationship to each other. And it's important in life to perceive the differences, and we're going to get at this a little bit. But in any event, at this point we just need to sort of have the idea that there's a lot out there that's going on that we need to pay attention to, that's been misted over by other kinds of ideas. We could say, for example, that the idea of God that's contained in the Christian outer religion is a very weak idea of God. It's not as profound as it could be. It's not as truthful as it could be. Now, the Hopi, for example, they met the Creator several times. And I've met the Creator, and I'm going to talk about how you can meet the Creator. And it's a personal relationship. It's not a relationship mediated by a priest or a bishop or a pope or anybody. It's just you and the divine mystery. And you interact with each other, you learn how to do that, and you'll discover things that can't be discovered in any other way. More later.